Ministerial standards set a high mark for both perceived and actual conduct, and particularly in relation to conflicts of interest. All members, when they become ministers, understand that.
After a difficult year, it was the questionable decision to accept anonymous donations through a blind trust to help pay his legal bills that sealed Christian Porter's fate.
In relation to Minister Porter, he has this afternoon taken the appropriate course of action to uphold those standards by tendering his resignation as a minister this afternoon, and I have accepted his resignation.
The move follows days of criticism from legal experts, transparency advocates, political opponents and former Prime Ministers.
This is no better than a person wearing a mask walking into Mr Porter's office with a bag of cash and saying, here's a donation.
Porter's legal bills mounted through a lawsuit he filed against the ABC for defamation in March over a story about an unnamed cabinet minister accused of an alleged historical rape. The then Attorney-General chose to reveal himself as the subject of the allegations.
But I can say categorically that what has been put in various forms in allegations simply did not happen.
While the minister has never revealed the size of his legal bill, we know the ABC paid $780,000 for its own costs, plus $100,000 of Mr Porter's mediation costs to settle the matter.
It is simply untenable for a minister of the Crown to receive up to $1 million from sources unknown in order to pursue a private legal matter.
With the PM heading to the US for talks with Joe Biden tomorrow, he's quickly filled the hole in his cabinet.
Today I've taken the step of appointing Angus Taylor as the Acting Minister for Industry, Science and Technology. He will perform those responsibilities together with his responsibilities for Minister for Energy and Emissions Reduction.
In a statement, Mr Porter wrote, "No doubt the desire of some, possibly many, of those contributors to remain anonymous was driven by a natural desire to avoid the inevitable fact that for supporting me, the trial by mob would inevitably turn on them." And far from resigning from political life entirely, Christian Porter has vowed to contest the next election.
Well, for the latest, we're catching up with political correspondent for The Guardian, Amy Ramikis. Amy, the PM implied there'd been a long discussion with Christian Porter. Did he really resign? Was he pushed to go?
I think it's probably a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B. I mean, Scott Morrison never cleared Christian Porter in terms of these declarations. He refused to enter into speculation on Friday when he was asked whether Christian Porter would keep his job. And I think everyone from his colleagues to the Prime Minister saw that the writing was on the wall.
Does this mean that we're likely to never find out who the mystery donor or donors were?
It's a tough one, that one, because Christian Porter is staying in the Parliament, so he is still an MP, which means that he is still subject to the same rules as every other backbencher, which is you need to declare your pecuniary interests. So it will be interesting to see whether he is forced into pressing the trustees into revealing that list. But as we know from his 1,600-word statement that he released this afternoon, that is not something that he is intending on doing.
So, Amy, is there anything in the ministerial code that explicitly prevents someone taking money from a blind trust?
Scott Morrison called it a grey area in his press conference today because while it says that ministers can't get anything which would give them advantages or disadvantages, it doesn't explicitly say you cannot take anonymous funds. Now, it does say that for political parties, and we've heard a lot about the spirit of the ministerial code of conduct, which would say that, yes, you cannot take anonymous donations, but it doesn't say that explicitly. Now, Scott Morrison did say that he thought the matter was closed, but if there was further advice from his department that it needed to be made explicit or any changes needed to be made to the code of conduct, he would do that.
He's gone to the backbench now, but is it ever appropriate for any politician, even a backbencher, to accept a large amount of money in anonymous donations, Amy?
I would say that no, I don't think anyone would ever find it appropriate for a politician to accept anonymous donations. We know how important transparency and accountability is. We know that our political system relies on trust and that accountability. We need to know who are funding our politicians and our political parties. And there's very strong reasons for that, because you don't want to think that any decision or that any politician could be unduly influenced by the money that they're receiving. That's why the rules are in place. And I think that's why we've seen this sort of action here, because it was becoming untenable for the government.
Amy Remeikis, great to chat as always.
With so much content online, it's sometimes hard to keep up with it all. And let's face it, who has the time? The Project YouTube has you covered with the stories that matter. Hit subscribe for a daily list of the news that you need to know.